Picture this. It's a quiet, misty, rural morning, long before the chaos and noise of the modern world really kicks in. Inside this small, slightly drafty brick workshop, an artisan is just quietly kneading a lump of fresh earth. It really is true. Every masterpiece begins as absolutely nothing more than earth, water, and a pair of incredibly patient hands.
So welcome to today's Explainer, where we're digging into the hands that shape the earth. Today, we're unpacking the seriously fascinating story of one of America's very last family-owned pottery studios. And honestly, it's just this beautiful, powerful lens into how shaping raw dirt serves as a metaphor for legacy, true craftsmanship, and our connection with the natural world. Let's dive right in and look at what it actually takes to leave a lasting mark. All right, let's start right at the beginning. Section 1, built from the earth. To really get what this studio is all about, we have to look at its roots. And I mean that literally, because those roots come directly from the ground beneath their feet. Over a century ago, back in the 1920s, the founders set up this workshop just by using the local clay. Back then, they were laser-focused on practical household goods, things people actually needed every day. Then hit the mid-20th century, and this place was the region's lifeline. This was way before factory-made ceramics took over, right? They were churning out thousands of pounds of crocks and storage jars. Honestly, they probably moved enough clay to build a small mountain. Now, fast forward to 2026, present day, the studio is still alive, led by a fourth or fifth generation master potter. And what's wild is that every single generation learned this craft not by reading a textbook, but through years of quiet observation and rigorous, gritty, hands-on practice. Think about that mid-century boom for a second. The relationship this family had with their community was just so deeply personal. One customer actually reflected on it, saying, "Every piece had tiny imperfections. That's how you knew it was made by someone, not something." In a time when the studio was basically a fixture of daily life, those little imperfections weren't flaws at all. They were literally signatures. They were undeniable proof of human connection sitting right there on your dinner table. And that perfectly sets up Section 2, the art of shaping. If you were to actually hang out and shadow this potter for a whole day, you'd witness this incredibly meticulous life cycle. First, you've got to prepare the raw clay to the absolute perfect consistency. And let me tell you, that process is legitimately a serious upper body workout. Then comes throwing the forms on the spinning wheel, where the clay is just carefully coaxed into these beautiful bowls and vessels. After that, it's mixing the glazes totally by hand and finally loading up the wood-fired kiln. You simply cannot rush this process. If you want a piece that's going to last for generations, it demands immense patience at every single step. And here is where it gets really cool, because the past is actively driving the present here. They are still using inherited artifacts. We're talking antique wheels that have been spinning for decades, old handwritten glaze journals packed with original secret recipes, and the historic kilns themselves. But way more importantly than the tools, they inherited a philosophy. It's a complete masterclass in operational continuity. They are actively preserving the maker's fingerprints by trusting the tools and the deep wisdom of their ancestors.
Now, all of that intense, careful work builds up to a wild climax. Let's move to Section 3, Trial by Fire.
Okay, this is literally where the magic happens. I want you to imagine the ambient sound of crackling fires and this intense, radiating heat rising inside a massive brick structure. The temperature gauges just climb higher and higher, often blowing right past an astonishing 2,300 degrees Fahrenheit. That intense heat is the precise moment where those raw, powdery glazes melt down into vibrant, permanent finishes. It's essentially breathing life right into the dried clay.
But, here's the catch. As the master potter points out, you never completely control the fire. That's part of what makes every piece unique. Think about that. Despite decades of inherited knowledge and all that painstaking preparation of the clay and the glazes, the fire itself is totally chaotic. Surrendering to that unpredictability, that perfectly encapsulates traditional craftsmanship. You do absolutely everything you can with your own two hands, and then you just have to step back and let the fire do the rest. It's this beautiful, completely humbling partnership with nature. Now, obviously, the rest of the world hasn't been quite as patient, which brings us to Section 4, a mass-produced world. Take a look at the ceramics industry today. It is overwhelmingly dominated by factory production. We're talking imported goods, big box retailers, endless online marketplaces, and the rapid-fire churning out of thousands upon thousands of perfectly identical pieces. Now contrast that staggering reality with this traditional studio. They are relying on historic recipes, small, completely unique batches, and having absolutely everything handmade. The sheer scale and rigid uniformity of modern consumer goods is just mind-blowing when you stack it up against the slow, deliberate nature of what this family does.
When you're up against that sheer wall of mass production, the owner of the studio offers this remarkably quiet, profound defense. They say, factories make thousands of identical cups. We make one that someone remembers. Wow, I mean, that hits the nail right on the head, doesn't it? That gets to the true emotional core of the studio. They aren't trying to compete on volume or speed. There is no way they could. Instead, they are fighting for memory, for longevity, and for deep, authentic meaning.
Which leads us to a pretty critical crossroads. Section 5, Shaping the Future.
So we're left with this central, kind of heavy question today. Whose hands will shape the clay next? As the master potter ages, the future is basically an open book. Will the younger family members actually want to take over the studio? Are there dedicated apprentices out there willing to step up and learn techniques that take literally years of their lives to truly master? And how on earth do you balance modern design tastes with such deeply historic craftsmanship?
But hey, the good news? This family isn't just sitting around hoping for the best. They are actively passing the craft forward. They're keeping this incredible tradition alive by teaching pottery classes, hosting community workshops, bringing in custom commissions, and constantly supporting other local artists. And this matters so much because they aren't just trying to preserve a business. They're planting the seeds for the next generation of artisans. They're bridging that historic craftsmanship with modern, hands-on community engagement.
The real takeaway here is this idea that clay literally becomes legacy. Something totally ordinary beneath our feet gets transformed into something extraordinary that outlives generations. As the morning light returns to the studio and the freshly fired pottery cools down on the shelves, the whole story just comes full circle. This explainer really serves as a massive reminder for us. In an era that is completely obsessed with instant gratification, the most meaningful things in life, and in business for that matter, are shaped slowly, with immense patience and genuine purpose.
I want to leave you with something to chew on today before we wrap up. If our creations outlast us, what kind of fingerprints are you leaving on the world? Whether you are shaping clay, building a business, or raising a family, we are all leaving a mark. Take a moment to think about the legacy of your own patient, careful hands. Thank you so much for exploring this amazing story with us today, and as always, keep learning.